When we think of class action lawsuits, it's the little guy taking on the corporate giant. And a win, often in the millions, perhaps even billions, being shared amongst those wronged. If only that was the case. Now, finance cowboys are moving in from overseas for a big payday, often at the expense of victims.
Dr. Donna, Steve Marshall, The Current Affair.
Hi.
Good morning.
It's absolutely disgusting. He should be ashamed of himself.
Have you got anything to say about the class action settlement?
I've nothing to say about that.
We're still begging for a crumb.
Jess should be celebrating a class action win against powerlifting plastic surgeon Dr. Eddie Donner's The Cosmetic Institute. But the mum of two doesn't feel like a winner.
Don't bother. It's not worth your time or your money. Which is sad. You should be able to get accountability and you should be able to be, compensated for the pain and hurt that you've been through.
Jess is among 1,033 women who allegedly suffered complications undergoing so-called one-size-fits-all breast augmentation surgery performed by a doctor working under the Cosmetic Institute banner.
Nothing but scarring, cysts, a silicone granuloma, diminished self-worth and self-esteem. And the constant fear of something that's gonna go wrong.
Jess needed her implants urgently removed and joined a class action launched by law firm Turner Freeman in 2017. In April this year, the case was settled before trial for $25 million, thanks in part to Dr. Donner's reluctant insurer.
Your insurer didn't want anything to do with it. What does that tell you?
You'll have to ask them.
So you've got nothing to say to these women? No. These women
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
You too.
There's a lot of women that won't be.
Thank you. Have a good day.
It's an absolute disgrace that he thinks that it's okay to damage people, get sued, and continue on with his life like nothing even happened.
Enjoy the gym session.
While Dr. Donner's demeanour angers Jess, she holds just as much contempt for Turner Freeman lawyers, who accepted the $25 million class action settlement on behalf of 1,033 women.
You get left in the dark, not knowing what's going on, and they decide to take a settlement without even asking anybody what they thought. They just thought of themselves.
Had you been asked, what would you have said?
I would have said no, that's not enough.
Who gets most of the $25 million?
The lawyers, they got 10 million.
Turner Freeman's fees were $8.9 million and another $1.1 million to administer the settlement scheme. 12 plaintiffs will share $2.81 million in damages and third-party repayments. That leaves just over $12 million for the remaining 1,021 group members like Jess, which will be paid out on a case-by-case basis. How much do you think you'll see out of this $25 million?
Nothing. I don't understand what they've actually done to help us, because at the end of the day, we're still damaged. And we're still hurt.
We reached out to Turner Freeman partner Terry Goldberg. We didn't get a response. Australia's now overtaken the US as world leaders in class actions. But recent settlements prove there's often not much left in the pot for victims after law firms take their cut. Last month, Slater & Gordon was awarded $10 million in fees from the recent $47 million ANZ Consumer Credit Insurance class action. That left more than 117,000 policyholders taking home around $317 each.
Are class action members getting their fair cut?
No, they're not.
Menzies Research Centre's Dave Hughes and his team have done a deep dive on class actions in Australia for its report Open Lawfare. Australia might lead the world in class actions, but payouts for victims are hardly world-class.
Many of them are confronted with a lack of transparency. They're told to sign up to deals that would benefit them, and then when they get through proceedings, they're finding that money's going off to lawyers, say 50% as a total share of the settlement, when they would have thought going into it that the victims would have got around 80 or 90%.
Open lawfare also exposes a system being exploited by profit-seeking litigation funders, financing class actions for huge returns.
Litigation funders in Australia often operate as the loan sharks of the legal community, often getting 20 to 40% of the share of a settlement in a class action, and that is money that is coming at the expense of victims.
Little darling, it seems like years since it's been clear.
Enter the piano-punching Harris Pogust and the jet-setting Tom Goodhead in the pink, heavy hitters from UK law firm Pogust Goodhead. The firm created shockwaves when it launched a whopping $68 billion class action against BHP over the 2015 Brazil dam disaster, despite BHP having already paid more than $10 billion in restitution to Brazilian authorities. Now the Brits have set up camp here, armed with a reported $1 billion war chest from a US hedge fund to target Aussie-based companies with class actions.
Which is concerning because we don't know precisely what companies are going to be targeting. And of course, if victims sign up to a class action backed by this fund, they're probably going to get a lesser share of the ultimate settlement than they would if they just launched that class action independently.
Imagine all the people.
Pogust Goodhead Chairman Harris might sing about the people, but neither he or anyone else from the firm accepted our invitation to comment on its Aussie class action invasion.
They've come here like vultures to sort of pick over the bones of Australian businesses because Australian laws are allowing them to do that.
Australian industry group boss Innes Willock says Aussie companies are sitting ducks.
Litigation funding in Australia has become a bit like the Wild West. Battlers who put forward claims into a class action and win are seeing what should rightfully be theirs be siphoned off overseas by foreign-based companies who are funding it.
An ASX 200 listed company had a 1 in 10 chance of copping a class action in 2020. Those odds ramped up after the federal government relaxed laws, exempting litigation funders from oversight.
Ripe conditions here in Australia mean that we're a honeypot for these litigation funders, where they're getting returns on investment of over 200%.
More than $1 billion in class action settlements were approved here in the last financial year. Never before have the payout scales tipped so far towards law firms and litigation funders. But should their riches come at the expense of class action victims like Jess, who need it most?
I want them to understand the hurt and the frustration that we're going through, and I just want them to be fair.
And we're not saying class actions should stop, but we need a system that isn't stacked against victims and Aussie businesses.